That's the reason I call you the Teflon Queen.
Because
you're lying about what has happened and what's been going on.
It's wild to me that you think I lie because I think you're manipulating.
A cinematic description of the phone buzzing. Use repetition and metaphor. The buzz wasn't just a notification. It was a summons. A reckoning. A knock on the door from the past. Immediate framing. What happens when contracts, family history, and betrayal collide in one word, BACKPAY. Chapter 1, Balance. Do dive into Meri's calm, her 2 words, her archiving habits, and her unshakable dignity. Emotional contrast with Kody's panic. Hooks like, Meri didn't demand. She didn't plead. She didn't even blink. She simply named the truth. Balance. Do. Chapter 2, The Anatomy of BACKPAY. Explain reality TV accounting in dramatic language. Family rate versus screen time rate. The hidden fine print of contracts. The concept of true-ups as emotional reckoning. Hook, because in the end, the camera is the bookkeeper and the lens never forgets. Chapter 3, Kody's spiral. Kody pacing, calling, panicking. Sources whispering about his frantic tone. His attempt to blame producers, blame wives, blame loopholes. Hook, for years, Kody thought he was the narrator. Now, he was just another entry in the ledger. Chapter 4, Meri's quiet victory. Friends describing her meticulous filing, her private strength. The archivist angle. She has always kept records, even when nobody was listening. Hook, Meri wasn't waiting for justice. She was building a case for it. Chapter 5, The TLC Machine. The network's role, whispers about producers, accountants, and clauses. The show doesn't just film. It tallies. Past examples where contracts bit cast members back. Hook, on television, nothing is free, not even silence. Chapter 6, Christine and Janelle's echo. Bring Christine and Janelle into the story. How their storylines carried weight post-divorce. How the true-up system may have owed them just as much, if not more. Hook, the women who left were still on screen. And the show pays screen time, not loyalty. Chapter 7, The Robin Factor. How Robin may have been paid disproportionately for her screen time. The boutique debt rumors tied to her financial entanglement. The resentment this stirs. Hook, BACKPAY wasn't just about math. It was about exposure. Chapter 8, The Fan Reckoning. Online fan reactions. How audiences parse contracts, speculate on numbers. Hashtags, viral debates about fairness. Hook, in the court of public opinion, the receipts were louder than the contracts. Chapter 9, The Emotional Math. Go deeper into the metaphor, money versus emotional debt. Balance. Do not just financially, but relationally. Kody's years of favoritism, neglect, and absence now written in a ledger he can't erase. Hook, this wasn't just about dollars. It was about decades. Chapter 10, The Silence versus. The spiral. Juxtapose Meri's stillness with Kody's frantic calls. The power of calm versus chaos. Hook, 1 buzz. 2 lives. One calm as a pond, the other a storm with no horizon. Chapter 11, The Legacy of BACKPAY. What this moment symbolizes for the family's history. How BACKPAY becomes a metaphor for every emotional score left unsettled. Hook, in the end, every story demands its balance due. Closing, The Ledger Never Lies. Dramatic outro tying it all back. The phone buzz, the panic, Meri's calm, the paper trail. Hook, for years, Kody wrote the narrative. But the ledger was writing, too. And the ledger never lies. Fire extra hooks, sprinkle throughout. When the cameras stopped rolling, the contracts kept calculating. BACKPAY isn't just a check. It's a confession. Balance. Do, 2 words that carried more weight than 20 years of arguments. The buzz of a phone in Flagstaff didn't just shake a kitchen. It shook an empire. In the end, silence was Meri's weapon, and the ledger was her proof. The anatomy of BACKPAY and Kody's spiral. The thing about money is that it rarely tells the story we want it to. It doesn't flatter, it doesn't soften. It doesn't pretend to care about pride or perception. Money, in the end, is cold. Exact. It counts what happened, not what someone wishes had happened. And in the world of sister wives, that truth has never been more brutal.
I say go for it.
Can we do Christmas here? Yes.
This season was filmed before the tragic passing of Janelle and Kody's 25-year-old.
Because if the whispers are to be believed, the message Kody Brown received that day wasn't just an administrative note. It was an accounting confession. A reminder that the cameras had been rolling, the contracts had been tracking, and the math was now calling in its balance. The family rate era for years, the Browns lived under a system that, on paper, looked simple, almost idealistic. One lump sum per season. A family rate. No one person singled out, no one valued higher than the other. The check arrived, the adults split it evenly, and the family could say, at least publicly, that they were in this together. But underneath that simplicity was a storm waiting to break. Because equal and fair are not the same thing. When Christine carried the storyline of heartbreak, when Janelle's pragmatism anchored entire episodes, when Meri's silence said more than Kody's shouting ever could, the checks remained the same. Equal. Uniform. Flattened. It worked when the family pretended to be united. But unity has a shelf life. The quiet evolution as the fractures deepened, insiders claim the contracts shifted. Quietly. Almost invisibly. No announcements. No fanfare. Just subtle new clauses, tucked deep into the paperwork. Appearance fees. Confessional tallies. Screen time waiting. Suddenly, every hour spent in front of the camera mattered. Suddenly, every confessional chair wasn't just a set piece. It was a paycheck. And suddenly, the people who carried the storylines, Christine's escape, Janelle's independence, even Meri's dignified silence, were being measured in a way they never had before. It wasn't about the family anymore. It was about contribution. And that's where the concept of true-ups entered the scene. True UPS, the reckoning nobody wants in television accounting. A true-up is simple in theory. You reconcile. You look at who showed up, who filmed, who delivered storylines, and you match pay accordingly. But in practice? True-ups are emotional grenades. Because sometimes, they mean bonuses, unexpected money for someone who ended up on screen more than expected. But sometimes, they mean deductions, reduced payouts for those who didn't deliver the hours, or who had taken advances against future filming days. And sometimes, they mean something far worse, that someone who thought they were done with you, still has to be paid. The panic in Flagstaff, this, sources whisper, is what made that buzz on Kody's counter so devastating. It wasn't just that money might shift. It was that money might shift backwards. Away from him. Away from Robin. Back toward the women who had already walked away. Imagine the humiliation. To preach unity, then lose it. To cling to control, then realize even the paychecks have moved on. Whispers say Kody's response was immediate. Pacing. Snapping questions into the phone. Calling producers. Calling accountants. Hunting for loopholes in clauses he probably never read carefully in the first place. The energy was frantic. Sharp. A man looking not for answers, but for someone to blame. Because that's the other truth about money, it doesn't just reveal numbers. It reveals character. And in that Flagstaff kitchen, his character was allegedly stripped bare. Meri's contrast while Kody spiraled, Meri's camp stayed silent. Still. Not because she didn't care, but because she didn't need to react. She had already done her homework. She had already kept her files. She had already built the proof that what was hers was hers. Balance due. 2 words. Nothing more. And yet, those 2 words carried more weight than 20 years of arguments. Because Meri didn't need to raise her voice. The paperwork spoke louder. The ledger versus. The narrative for years, Kody has been the narrator. His voice carrying the storylines. His perspective dominating confessionals. His control framing the family's chaos. But the ledger doesn't care about narrative. The ledger doesn't care about charisma, or shouting, or who thinks they're in charge. The ledger only cares about minutes on screen, confessionals filmed, contracts signed. And for once, Kody's narration couldn't save him. Because the ledger doesn't bend. The ledger doesn't lie. A man out of control whispers from insiders describe the scene as almost cinematic, Kody pacing back and forth in the kitchen, phone in hand. His voice sharp, clipped, growing louder. Each call answered with less clarity than the last. Each attempt at control slipping further through his fingers. This can't be right. Check the contracts again. There must be some mistake. But the more he demanded answers, the clearer the reality became. This wasn't a mistake. It was a mirror. The kind of mirror that shows not the version of events Kody wanted to believe, but the one that had been documented all along. Because the cameras don't lie. And neither do the checks. The metaphor of BACKPAY, and here lies the cruelest irony. BACKPAY isn't just about money. It's about recognition. It's about acknowledgement. It's about debt, emotional as much as financial. Christine's years of exhaustion. Janelle's sacrifices. Meri's loyalty turned into silence. All of it had been written off, dismissed, minimized. But the numbers remembered. The contracts remembered. And now, the BACKPAY was remembering, too. Balance due. Not just in dollars. But in decades. The calm versus the chaos. Imagine the contrast. On one side of town, Meri. Calm. Smiling. 2 words of acknowledgement, not desperation. A woman whose dignity was finally matching her balance sheet. On the other, Kody. Sweating. Pacing. Making frantic calls that led to no resolution. A man staring at numbers he couldn't bend to his will. 2 people who once shared a life, now divided by a single truth. One had prepared for this moment. The other had run from it. And when the reckoning came, only one stood steady. Part 2 closes here, with the scene set, Kody's panic escalating, Meri's quiet strength unshakable, and the whispers of BACKPAY transforming from a financial detail into a metaphor for everything this family has ever owed and never settled. Because the story isn't about one message. It's about what that message revealed. And in part 3, we dive even deeper, into Christine's and Janelle's echoes in this adjustment, the whispers about Robyn's disproportionate payout, and the way TLC itself became the unseen referee in the Browns' unraveling. Christine, Janelle, and the Robyn factor. BACKPAY. A word that should be sterile, clinical, just a line on a spreadsheet. But in the Browns' world, it has become something far bigger. Because this wasn't only about Kody and Meri. The whispers suggest the ripples reached further, straight into the lives of Christine, Janelle, and Robyn. And once their names enter the equation, the story changes. Christine's echo. When Christine left, she wasn't just walking away from a marriage. She was walking away from decades of sacrifice, meals cooked, children raised, wounds patched. Her storyline became the turning point of the entire series. The cameras didn't just follow her departure. They thrived on it. Her confessionals carried raw honesty. Her tears and her laughter made viewers lean forward in their seats. Her courage to leave became the emotional climax of entire seasons. And here's the truth about reality television: the storylines that bring ratings are the storylines that bring dollars. So when the accountants sat down to tally up screen time and appearances, Christine's presence wasn't something they could brush aside. She was there. She was raw. She was real. And by the whispers of those who know the paperwork, she was owed. BACKPAY wasn't just about numbers. It was validation. The proof that Christine's decision to choose herself was not only the emotional center of the show, it was also the financial one. For Christine, the alleged adjustment may not have been a surprise. Those close to her suggest she never chased the money. She chased peace. But the irony is brutal. The moment she walked away from Kody, the show began to pay her more than ever before. Because the lens doesn't lie. And the lens couldn't look away from Christine. Janelle's ledger. If Christine's storyline was emotional, Janelle's was practical. Where Christine brought tears, Janelle brought questions. Where Christine opened her heart, Janelle opened spreadsheets. Fans remember her confessionals, blunt, grounded, the voice of logic in a world that often made no sense. She wasn't screaming or crying. She was analyzing. And in television, that balance matters. Janelle's arc, especially after Garrison and Gabriel's struggles with Kody, anchored entire episodes. Her scenes with her sons, her quiet but cutting confrontations with Kody, her attempts to keep her household afloat financially, these weren't filler. These were pillars. And the accountants noticed. Insiders claim Janelle's presence carried more weight than she ever realized. She may not have been dramatic, but she was indispensable. Which meant that when the reconciliation came, her name was likely highlighted in bold. Because whether Kody admitted it or not, the numbers did. Janelle wasn't background. She was backbone. For her, the whispers suggest the BACKPAY moment was less about money and more about something deeper, acknowledgement. A recognition that the time she gave, the stories she carried, the pain she endured, it was measurable. It was counted. And the balance was due. The Robin factor, but every equation has a variable that throws it off balance. And in this story, that variable was Robin. From the moment she joined the family, Robin's financial story has been complicated. The boutique debts. The house in Flagstaff. The whispers of special treatment from TLC. Insiders claim that for years, Robin's screen time was padded, not because of her popularity, but because of her position. She was Kody's favorite. She was the new chapter. The fresh storyline. Producers leaned into her role, but fans noticed the imbalance. And when the contracts shifted toward a pay-per-appearance model, this favoritism may have backfired. Because while Robin had scenes, many of them lacked the depth or drama that fans craved. Her tears felt repetitive. Her narratives felt forced. Meanwhile, Christine and Janelle's arcs exploded with resonance. So when the true-ups landed, whispers suggest the math didn't favor Robin as much as she expected. The adjustment may have revealed something Kody never wanted to admit: Robin's presence wasn't carrying the show anymore. It was Christine. It was Janelle. Even Meri's silence spoke louder. And that's the kind of math no favoritism can erase. The uneven scales. Imagine the table where those adjustments were tallied. Names listed in neat columns. Hours on screen. Confessionals filmed. Storylines tracked. Christine, heavy presence, emotional core. Janelle, steady presence, practical contrast. Meri, quieter, but essential in her dignified departure. Robin, frequent, but repetitive. Kody, central, but increasingly combative and alienating. The math wasn't emotional. But its implications were. Because it showed, in black and white, what the fans had been saying for years: the women who left were carrying the story. The woman who stayed was not. Christine's smile, Janelle's strength. When whispers of the adjustment reached Christine and Janelle, insiders say their reactions couldn't have been more different from Kody's. Christine, in her new life with David, reportedly laughed. Not cruelly, but knowingly. The kind of laugh that comes from realizing the peace you fought for is finally paying dividends in ways you never expected. Janelle, ever the pragmatist, reportedly nodded with a small smile. Not because of the money, but because of the recognition. For years, she balanced the family's books, stretched every dollar, carried more than her share. And now, for once, the balance was being tallied in her favor. Neither woman gloated. Neither woman shouted. They simply recognized what was always true: you can't erase contribution. You can't rewrite the numbers. Robin's silence and Robin? Insiders whisper that her silence was telling. While Kody raged and scrambled for answers, Robin reportedly stayed quiet. Not calm like Meri. Not amused like Christine. Not steady like Janelle. Silent. Because silence, too, tells a story. Was it embarrassment? Was it fear? Was it the sudden realization that the numbers didn't match the narrative she had clung to? Whatever it was, the silence lingered. And in that silence, fans and insiders alike began to wonder, had the so-called favorite wife just been outscored by the women Kody left behind? The shift in power. This is where the story shifts from numbers to symbolism. Because BACKPAY isn't just a check. It's a redistribution of power. It's a reminder that the story belongs to those who lived it, not those who tried to control it. Christine's courage. Janelle's strength. Meri's dignity. They weren't just personal triumphs. They were billable hours. They were screen time. They were receipts. And when the accountants finally closed the books on season 19, the math confirmed what the fans already knew. The women who walked away weren't just free. They were the ones who carried the legacy. Kody's breaking point. For Kody, this was the breaking point. The whispers suggest he raged not just at the accountants, but at the idea itself. How can they owe money if they're not even here? He allegedly snapped to one insider. They left. They don't get to take from us anymore. But the numbers didn't care. They weren't based on loyalty. They weren't based on marriage vows. They were based on footage. And the footage showed the truth. The story of sister wives had already shifted away from him. Part 3 ends here, with the stage widened, the players revealed. Christine's echo of freedom, Janelle's quiet recognition, Robin's uncomfortable silence. And Kody's panic reaching a boiling point. Because Part 4 will push even further into the role of TLC itself. Silence has a way of speaking louder than shouting. And in the Brown family's world, where chaos, tension, and emotional upheaval had become the soundtrack of their lives, silence was often the most dangerous weapon of all. When the topic of BACKPAY first broke open during season 19's off-camera negotiations, fans assumed it would just be another fleeting scandal. After all, the Browns had weathered dozens of controversies, favoritism, betrayals, the endless accusations of manipulation. But this wasn't just about feelings, or who loved who the most. This was about money owed. Work done. Hours filmed. Confessionals delivered. And for Meri Brown, who had endured more than a decade of being sidelined, diminished, and neglected, the irony couldn't have been sharper. Kody, the man who had once built his empire on the backs of 4 women, was now sitting across from her in a heated conversation about accounts payable. The network's handshake TLC executives, desperate to salvage the shreds of season 19, had quietly called each wife, past and present, into a string of individual meetings. Their question was simple: do you feel you've been compensated fairly? Christine, liberated and glowing in her new Utah life, answered with a mix of humor and directness. She laughed, sipped her coffee, and said, "Fairly? For years I worked for free, for exposure, for the illusion of unity. But let's be honest, if you really want fairness, you'll need to go back and balance the books. Because I've been carrying storylines for years." Janelle, steady as always, brought spreadsheets. Numbers. Dates. Episode breakdowns. She showed, line by line, how her hours on camera and her central role in key episodes were never matched by her pay. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She simply laid the evidence down and asked, "What are you going to do about it?" But it was Meri's response that shook the boardroom. She didn't come with anger. She didn't come with proof. She came with one sentence: "Whatever you think you owe me, it will never match what was taken from me." The room went silent. Because everyone knew she wasn't just talking about BACKPAY. Kody's spiral when word leaked that TLC was considering issuing retroactive adjustments for seasons past, especially for confessionals where Meri and Janelle had carried emotional weight, Kody panicked. If Christine had left, if Janelle had distanced herself, if Meri had remained in the shadows, it would have been one thing. He could write them off as irrelevant. But suddenly, with cameras rolling, the three women he thought he had diminished were being framed as the real stars of the story. And worse? The pay scale might prove it. Kody raged, telling producers, "I'm the face of this show. Without me, there's no sister wives. Why should I be paying them back when I'm the one who's been here every day, every episode, keeping the family together?" But the truth was unavoidable. For entire seasons, Kody's presence had dwindled. Fans saw it. Critics saw it. Even the editors saw it. It wasn't him holding the family together. It was Meri's quiet endurance. It was Janelle's calm reasoning. It was Christine's fire. And now the balance sheet was about to expose him in a way more humiliating than any tell-all. Robyn's rage. If Kody panicked, Robyn fumed. To her, the very idea of revisiting past paychecks was offensive. She saw it as an attack not just on Kody, but on the life she had built, the mansion, the lifestyle, the narrative of being the only loyal wife left. Behind closed doors, she vented to producers, "They're bitter. They're just trying to punish us. You can't rewrite history. I'm the one who's here. I'm the one who stayed." But for the first time, her tears rang hollow. Because even Robyn knew, Meri had been there too. Silent. Waiting. Taking crumbs. And now, in her calm, measured way, Meri was asking for balance, not just of money, but of truth. Meri's calm. The moment that set social media ablaze came during a confessional. The producer asked Meri, "Do you think Kody owes you back pay?" Meri didn't flinch. Didn't blink. She simply shrugged and said, "Balance due." 2 words. But they carried decades of betrayal. Because for Meri, this wasn't about dollars. It was about recognition. It was about accountability. It was about standing up, finally, to a man who had systematically erased her from his life and from the narrative. And for fans, those 2 words became a rallying cry. Memes flooded Twitter. TikToks layered the clip with dramatic music. Balance due trended for days. Meri, the woman once mocked for her silence, had spoken. The family fractures, again behind the scenes, the family split into camps. Christine's kids openly supported their mom, cheering on her strength to demand fairness. Janelle's kids, particularly Logan and Gabriel, took to social media with subtle but powerful posts about unpaid labor and carrying the emotional weight. Meri's supporters reminded the world of her years of humiliation, her catfishing scandal being weaponized, and the way she was pushed out of her own marriage. And then there was Robyn's household. Her daughters, Aurora and Brianna, who once idolized the family dream, now found themselves in a crumbling fortress. Fans noticed their silence online. Their absence from key family moments. And speculation swirled, were they beginning to see the cracks too? Kody's breaking point. As the negotiations stretched on, Kody's paranoia grew. He began accusing TLC of rewriting the family's legacy to erase him. He accused his ex-wives of collusion. He accused Meri of betrayal. But his words no longer landed. Because for the first time, the women didn't argue back. They didn't fight for his approval. They didn't beg for recognition. They simply sat back, calm, and let the weight of truth do the work. And when Meri smiled, soft, tired, but resolute, Kody finally realized what he had lost. Not just money. Not just love. But control. The silent reckoning. The tension between Kody and TLC executives did not fade with a single accounting meeting. If anything, it spread, like wildfire, through every layer of the production. What started as a BACKPAY dispute was mutating into something far more dangerous, a reckoning with the truth that had been hidden for years. For the first time, numbers were not just numbers. They were proof. They showed, in black and white, how unevenly the profits of sister wives had been distributed. They revealed the weight of favoritism, Robyn's inflated screen time, her bonus pay, and her near monopoly over Kody's storyline. But here's the irony. The more Kody fought against the claims, the louder fans grew online. Hashtags like #BalanceDoKody and #MeriDeservesJustice trended within hours of the leaked rumors. Viewers began dissecting old episodes frame by frame, tallying who appeared most, who delivered the emotional arcs, and who carried the burden of storytelling when Kody himself pulled away. And the results? Devastating for Kody. Christine's escape, Janelle's defiance, and Meri's resilience had become the backbone of the last 3 seasons. Fans pointed out that without the women, there was no show. Without their vulnerability, their confessionals, their heartbreak, TLC would have had nothing but Kody's anger and Robin's tears on repeat. The public was no longer fooled. The meeting behind closed doors, one producer later whispered that Kody stormed into the next network meeting red-faced and trembling, demanding answers. He accused TLC of betrayal, of siding with the women over him. He declared himself the heart of the franchise, the one who had built the show from day one. But then came the dagger. A quiet producer slid a folder across the table. Inside were ratings charts, broken down season by season. Every spike in viewership? It was tied to Christine's departure, Janelle's breaking point, or Meri's moments of quiet devastation. Every dip? Episodes dominated by Robin's endless tears and Kody's rants. The truth was undeniable. Kody wasn't the engine anymore, he was the anchor, dragging the ship down. Meri's quiet power while Kody fought, Meri sat in silence. She had stopped defending him long ago. She had stopped defending the family dream long ago. What she had now was something far more valuable: receipts. Her calm shrug, her infamous balance-due remark, it wasn't just a line. It was a warning. She knew the numbers. She knew the contracts. And if pushed too far, she could sink everything with a single revelation. For years, Meri had been cast as the lonely, desperate first wife clinging to a broken marriage. But in this moment, she was something else entirely, a woman who finally understood her worth, and the price of being underestimated. Fans demand justice. Social media exploded with calls for TLC to pay the women what they were owed. Some even urged them to sue Kody and Robin directly. One viral comment read, "If Meri, Janelle, and Christine filed a class action lawsuit against Kody for misused funds, they'd win. Period." Others pointed out that Kody and Robin had allegedly redirected family money into their $900,000 mansion, while the other wives lived in rentals, apartments, or struggled to stay afloat. The hypocrisy was too sharp to ignore. The shift at TLC behind the cameras, something profound was happening. TLC executives, once terrified of losing the patriarch storyline, began shifting their focus. They knew where the ratings were. They knew where the loyalty was. And it wasn't with Kody and Robin. Producers started drafting alternative pitches, spin-offs centered on Christine's new life, Janelle's independence, and Meri's next chapter. The unspoken threat was clear: if Kody continued to fight over BACKPAY, if he continued to panic and rage, the network could easily pivot. They no longer needed him. For the first time in over a decade, Kody Brown was not indispensable. The question now lingered like a storm cloud: would Kody double down on his rage, risking everything in one final bid for control? Or would Meri, Janelle, and Christine finally cash in their silence, shattering the last remnants of Kody's carefully controlled narrative? The balance due was not just financial. It was emotional. It was historical. It was decades of betrayal, finally adding up. And the Browns were about to learn that when the ledger came due, someone always pays.